Ever wondered what happens when a spy dies? How does a government handle the death of someone whose very existence was a state secret? What dark truths lie buried with these shadows of history? Number 6. The vanishing of Heinrich Müller, Hitler's spy master who disappeared without a trace. What happens when one of history's most notorious spy chiefs simply vanishes? Heinrich Müller, the head of the Gestapo during Hitler's regime, seemingly evaporated after the fall of Berlin in 1945. As the Soviet forces closed in on Hitler's bunker, Müller was last seen in the Führer bunker on May 1, 1945, the day after Hitler's suicide. He reportedly declared to his colleagues, "We know the Russian methods exactly. I haven't the slightest intention of being taken prisoner by the Russians." After that moment, Heinrich Müller, the man who had orchestrated countless intelligence operations, interrogations, and persecutions, disappeared completely. Despite being one of the most hunted Nazi officials, Müller's fate remains one of the Cold War's enduring mysteries. Unlike Adolf Eichmann or Joseph Mengele, who fled to South America, or other Nazi officials who were captured or confirmed dead, Müller simply vanished. No body, no trail, nothing. The theories about his fate are as numerous as they are contradictory. Some believe he died during the chaotic final days of Berlin, his body lost among thousands of unidentified casualties. Others suggest he escaped, possibly with the help of American intelligence who might have valued his anti-communist expertise during the early Cold War. The CIA and West German intelligence spent decades looking into reports that Müller had been spotted in various places around the world. One particularly persistent theory claims the Soviet Union captured Müller and forced him to work for their intelligence services. Documents released after the fall of the Soviet Union hinted at this possibility, though nothing conclusive has ever emerged. Another theory suggests Müller escaped to South America using the infamous ratlins that helped many Nazi officials flee Europe. In 1963, a grave in a Berlin cemetery was discovered to contain a body claimed to be Müller's, but forensic examination proved inconclusive. The German government officially declared him dead in 1971, though this was merely a legal formality without concrete evidence. The CIA continued investigating Müller's disappearance until at least the 1990s. Documents declassified in 2001 revealed that American intelligence never definitively determined his fate. Whatever happened to Heinrich Müller, the truth remains classified, buried in archives in Moscow, Washington, or perhaps lost to history entirely. Number 5. Richard Sorge, the spy who predicted Operation Barbarossa. Would you believe one of the greatest intelligence coups of World War II came from a hard-drinking journalist who openly admitted his communist sympathies? Richard Sorge, a Soviet spy operating in Japan, warned Stalin about Hitler's planned invasion of the Soviet Union, a warning that went tragically unheeded. Sorge's cover was nearly perfect. Working as a German journalist in Tokyo during the 1930s and early 1940s, he cultivated close relationships with the German ambassador and numerous Japanese officials. His charm, intelligence, and seemingly endless capacity for alcohol made him a fixture in diplomatic circles. Few suspected this charismatic German was actually Soviet intelligence's most valuable asset in the Far East. His greatest achievement came in 1941 when he provided Moscow with detailed information about Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's planned invasion of the Soviet Union, including the exact date. Stalin, suspicious of British misinformation, ignored these warnings, leading to the devastating initial success of the German attack. Sorge also informed Moscow that Japan would not attack the Soviet Union, but would instead focus on targets in the Pacific. This critical intelligence allowed Soviet commanders to transfer Siberian divisions westward to defend Moscow, arguably saving the Soviet capital from falling to Nazi forces. In October 1941, Japanese counterintelligence finally caught up with Sorge and his network. After his arrest, Sorge reportedly told his interrogators, "There is no doubt that I am a Soviet agent. Let's waste no time on preliminaries." He was hanged on November 7, 1944, in Sugamo Prison in Tokyo. Yet the circumstances surrounding his final days remain shrouded in mystery. The Soviet Union denied any knowledge of Sorge until 1964, when Khrushchev posthumously declared him a hero of the Soviet Union. Reports from his time in prison suggest the Soviets made no effort to save him, despite opportunities for a prisoner exchange. Some historians believe Sorge possessed compromising information about Soviet intelligence operations or about Stalin himself, information the Soviet leadership preferred to have buried with him. Japanese prison records from his final days remain classified, and rumors persist that Sorge left behind memoirs or confession documents that have never been released. The full truth about Sorge's final communications with Moscow, what he revealed during interrogation, and why the Soviets abandoned their most successful spy in the Far East remains classified. His grave in Tokyo became a site of pilgrimage for Soviet intelligence officers, yet the complete story of his death continues to elude historians. Number 4. Juan Pujol Garcia, the spy who fooled Hitler. How does a chicken farmer with no military training become one of World War II's most successful double agents? Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed GARBO by British intelligence, created an entirely fictional network of spies that helped convince Hitler the D-Day landings would occur at Calais rather than Normandy. A Spaniard who loathed both fascism and communism, Pujol approached British intelligence offering to spy against the Germans. Initially rejected, the determined Pujol approached the Germans instead, offering to spy for them in England. The Germans accepted, despite the fact that Pujol had never even visited England. Undeterred, he created reports based on reference materials, tourist guides, and cinema newsreels, building an elaborate fiction from Portugal that his German handlers believed wholeheartedly. Eventually, the British discovered this amateur was feeding false information to the Germans and recruited him properly. Under MI5's direction, Pujol developed a network of 27 fictional sub-agents supposedly reporting to him from across Britain. His reports, a careful mix of accurate but non-critical information, harmless facts, and strategic misinformation, made him Hitler's most trusted spy in Britain. Pujol's crowning achievement came during the D-Day deception plan. He convinced German high command that the Normandy landings were merely a diversion and that the main attack would come at Calais. Even after Allied troops had established a beachhead in Normandy, Hitler held back critical divisions, waiting for the real invasion that Pujol had promised was coming. This deception likely saved thousands of Allied lives. After the war, Pujol faked his own death in Angola in 1949, presumably to avoid potential revenge from surviving Nazi sympathizers. He moved to Venezuela, where he ran a bookstore and gift shop. For decades, both the British and his family in Spain believed he had actually died in Angola. In 1984, a British writer researching GARBO tracked him down, still living quietly in Venezuela. The revelation that he was alive led to belated recognition, including an MBE from Britain, making him one of the few people to receive decorations from both sides in World War II, as Hitler had awarded him the Iron Cross. Pujol died in Caracas in 1988, but numerous files related to his operations remain classified. Intelligence historians believe these documents contain sensitive information about how deeply GARBO's intelligence penetrated German high command, and possibly implicate prominent figures who were never publicly identified as Nazi collaborators. The full extent of his network, the identities of those who assisted him, and certain aspects of his post-war life remain state secrets to this day. Number 3. Ashraf Marwan, the billionaire who played both sides. Can you imagine being both Israel's most valuable spy and Egypt's trusted insider? Ashraf Marwan, son-in-law to Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser and close advisor to President Anwar Sadat, lived this double life until his mysterious death in London. Born into a wealthy Egyptian family, Marwan married Nasser's daughter Mona in 1966, giving him unprecedented access to Egypt's corridors of power. Sometime around 1970, Marwan reportedly approached Israeli intelligence, offering his services. Over the following years, he provided Israel with Egyptian military secrets of extraordinary value. His most significant contribution came before the 1973 Yom Kippur War, when he warned Israel about Egypt's imminent attack. Though there's controversy about the timing and details of this warning, Israeli intelligence officials credit him with saving countless lives by providing critical information about Egyptian military capabilities and plans. Alongside his espionage activities, Marwan built a business empire, becoming a billionaire arms dealer and businessman with connections across the Middle East and Europe. He counted among his associates figures as diverse as Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi and British businessmen. The question of Marwan's true loyalty has perplexed intelligence analysts for decades. Was he genuinely an Israeli asset, or was he an Egyptian double agent feeding Israel carefully selected information to build credibility? Some Israeli officials believe he was running a complex deception operation for Egypt, while others insist he was genuinely working for the Mossad. In 2002, his cover was blown when Israeli journalist Aron Bregman publicly identified him as a spy. This exposure placed Marwan in grave danger, as he was now vulnerable to retribution from Egyptian intelligence or other Arab security services. On June 27, 2007, Marwan fell to his death from the balcony of his expensive apartment in London's Carlton House Terrace. Though officially ruled a suicide, many questions surround his death. Witnesses reported seeing businessmen types entering his building shortly before his fall. His family emphatically rejected the suicide verdict, insisting he was murdered. Both Israeli and Egyptian intelligence services had motives to silence Marwan. For Israel, he possessed knowledge of decades of operations and agent networks. For Egypt, he represented a potential embarrassment if he revealed too much about inner government workings during the Nasser and Sadat eras. British authorities have kept many details about the investigation classified. Forensic evidence, witness statements, and surveillance footage from around Marwan's apartment building remain under seal. His death was investigated by Scotland Yard's Counter-Terrorism Command rather than regular homicide detectives, suggesting national security implications. At Marwan's funeral in Egypt, he received full military honors, with President Hosni Mubarak calling him a true patriot. The full story of his espionage career, his true allegiances, and the circumstances of his death remain buried in classified files in London, Cairo, and Tel Aviv. Number 2. Boris Bazarov, Stalin's spymaster who disappeared in the purges. What happens when one of your country's most effective spymasters knows too much about your own crimes? Boris Bazarov ran some of the Soviet Union's most successful intelligence operations in Europe before becoming a victim of Stalin's paranoia. In the 1920s and early 1930s, Bazarov established himself as a brilliant spymaster, creating networks across Western Europe that penetrated governments, military establishments, and industrial complexes. Operating under diplomatic cover in Germany and later in France, he recruited assets who provided Moscow with crucial intelligence, including details of Western military technology and diplomatic negotiations. Perhaps his most significant achievement was helping to establish the Cambridge Five, the notorious group of British elite recruited as Soviet spies during their university days. Bazarov personally handled some of these agents during their early years, helping to place them in positions within the British establishment where they would later access critical secrets. Bazarov was known for his sophisticated approach to intelligence gathering, focusing on cultivating long-term assets rather than quick results. He trained his agents meticulously and developed innovative communication methods that helped his networks avoid detection for years. In 1937, at the height of Stalin's Great Purge, Bazarov was recalled to Moscow. Despite his extraordinary service record, he fell victim to the wave of paranoia sweeping through Soviet intelligence services. By this point, Bazarov knew too much about operations, about agents, and perhaps about Stalin's own involvement in various clandestine activities. Official Soviet records state that Bazarov was arrested in February 1938 on charges of espionage and counter-revolutionary activities, the standard accusations during the purges. He was reportedly executed by firing squad on July 21, 1939. However, significant questions surround his final days. Some historians believe Bazarov may have been subjected to extensive interrogation before his execution, forced to reveal details about his agent networks and operations. Others suggest he might have been kept alive longer than officially acknowledged, possibly to help train a new generation of intelligence officers before being eliminated. The exact charges against him, transcripts of his interrogation, and even the location of his remains remain classified in Russian archives. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Bazarov was posthumously rehabilitated, but many files related to his case remain sealed, labeled as still relevant to current national security concerns. Former KGB officials who later defected to the West hinted that Bazarov's case contained information that would be embarrassing to Russian intelligence even decades later, possibly regarding operations that continued long after his supposed execution or methods that remain in use. The full truth about his final days and what secrets he took to his grave remains hidden in classified archives. Number 1. Dorothy Arzner, Hollywood director or American spy. Could one of early Hollywood's most successful female directors have secretly been an American intelligence operative whose death remains classified? Dorothy Arzner broke countless gender barriers in the film industry while potentially leading a double life that remains shrouded in mystery. As one of the only female directors working in Hollywood's golden age, Arzner directed over 20 films between 1927 and 1943, working with stars like Katharine Hepburn, Joan Crawford, and Claudette Colbert. She was innovative and bold, inventing the first boom microphone and tackling themes of female independence when such topics were rarely explored on screen. What makes Arzner particularly intriguing to intelligence historians is her sudden departure from filmmaking at the height of her career, coinciding with World War II. In 1943, she abruptly stopped directing commercial films and began making Women's Army Corps training films. Her official biography claims poor health forced her retirement from major studio productions, but declassified documents suggest a different story. Arzner's substantial connections to European film industries, particularly in Germany before Hitler's rise, placed her in contact with numerous individuals of interest to American intelligence. As a lesbian who moved in bohemian circles across Europe and America, she had access to social networks that traditional intelligence operatives couldn't easily penetrate. During World War II, the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, predecessor to the CIA, recruited numerous Hollywood figures to gather intelligence and create propaganda. While names like Marlene Dietrich and John Ford are well-documented OSS collaborators, Arzner's potential involvement has remained more obscure. Fragmentary evidence from declassified OSS files mentions a female film industry professional with access to artistic circles in Berlin, Paris, and Vienna, who provided valuable intelligence on German propaganda efforts and cultural figures with Nazi connections. Though the name is redacted, details align closely with Arzner's biography. After the war, Arzner taught filmmaking at UCLA and lived a quiet life with her partner Marion Morgan until her death in 1979. The official cause of death was reported as complications from a fall at her home in La Quinta, California. However, inconsistencies in public records about her final days have fueled speculation. Her death certificate contains unusual redactions, and former students reported being told conflicting stories about her passing. Most puzzlingly, her personal papers and effects were reportedly collected by government representatives rather than family members. In the late 1990s, researchers using the Freedom of Information Act to access materials about Hollywood's connection to intelligence activities received heavily redacted files about Arzner, with significant sections about her post-1943 activities and death cited as still classified for national security reasons. Was Dorothy Arzner simply a groundbreaking filmmaker, or did she lead a double life as an American intelligence asset whose full story remains classified? Did her connections to pre-war European artistic circles make her valuable to wartime intelligence gathering? Why would details about the death of a film director who passed away in 1979 remain classified decades later? The truth about Dorothy Arzner's potential intelligence career and the circumstances of her death remain locked in classified files. Until these records are fully declassified, we can only speculate about the secrets this pioneering filmmaker may have carried to her grave. What other seemingly ordinary public figures might have led extraordinary secret lives in service to their countries?